Actually, he's representing Keith from RTI. Keith could not travel, I believe. So Anirban is here. Anirban is an innovation engineer at RTI India. He's BE Electrical and MBA in Finance. Nice combination. And his focus is on water, waste, sanitation sector. And strategic role, he's playing strategic role. He's got around 9 years of experience. So, welcome, Anirban.
Stay Shri. Yeah, breaking news. I'm not Keith Weiss. Anirban Chatterjee here. And RTI doesn't only stand for Right to Information, it also stands for Research Triangle Institute, which I'm a part of. And that probably brings me to the first, and within the first minute of my speech is the first takeaway of my session. All that seems may not be so, and that goes true for waste as well, because it can be considered as misplaced resource, someone else's treasure, as we have been looking at this presentation. So, what we do is deliver the promise of science for the global good. So, Research Triangle Institute is based out of North Carolina. For over 58 years. We have been in operation in India not so long back, but what we do is a lot of applied research, and we try to see that new and upcoming technologies, sciences that are getting developed actually see the light of the day, make a change in the lives of the common citizen. And that's what our mission is at Research Triangle Institute. In terms of waste, what I would probably try to do over here, and that brings me to the second takeaway, is while there are a lot of technologies which are upcoming and which I will briefly share in my discussion over here, I think more important is the approach with which we innovate and bring about new technologies. And if that approach is correct, half the battle is won. And that is something that we have done in the past, and we have been doing currently as well. And so I bring to you a few examples, real life work which we have done, and through it probably we can see how we can replicate that across the world. Again, a typical challenge, red letter slide. These are the problems. There's so much waste. A lot of it is getting recycled, a lot of it isn't. Whatever is getting collected, just a penny of it is getting treated, and so there's a huge landfill issue. So again, just to summarize that. And I think we started off this journey on revolutionizing and innovating on the waste management framework from the streets itself, and I mean literally. So we have been working in the past across the globe, in Egypt, in Brazil, in Germany, and we are trying to understand what makes the difference in waste management. And obviously, you know, as all of us probably would be aware, and has been being discussed in this session and elsewhere, is the extent of segregation, is the extent of homogeneity in the waste streams that we are trying to manage. And probably that is relevant in the tagline which we have as waste management innovation. And so innovation starts right over here. And the extent of formality is something that we are trying to bring over here. And this essentially helps across the value chain when it comes to transportation, when it comes to treatment, and reduces the need for disposal. A very classic business model which we have here in India, and I thought should find mention, is Swatch, who are covering almost 50% households here in Pune, and they have recently been asked to cover 100% of households in Pune, and that has radically changed the solid waste management situation of that particular city. And that is where probably our thought process has started off. Is first we need to identify the various waste stream and bring in strategies at the grassroots level, whether it's a residential setting, whether it's an industrial setting. However, so the homogeneity in waste streams must be ensured. And a few examples like PET bottles being converted to yarn, and that is something that is being done in India in pockets, but can be scaled up as well. We have HDPE, which is again recycled, and this is probably the ease of recycling for various forms of plastic that enter the waste streams today. And while some are more easily recyclable, others are not quite so. And this example, even though I'm speaking of plastic, can get replicated for other forms of material which enters the waste stream. And so the close linkages of waste management from the material science perspective as well. And how it helps is at every stage of processing, we are adding value to that material. So just sorting, just having separate waste streams, I think creates the distinction between garbage and waste plastic or used plastic for recycle or used material for recycle. I think that is the first distinction which it draws into. You wash it and you dry it, and then you say it's ready for pre-processing. We cut it, we shred it, we say we have raw materials ready. And so at each stage of the processing, we add value, and that is probably where recycling comes in. That is probably where we talk about circular economy at each and every stage of treatment and waste management. So we looked at all of this, and for the US EPA we came up with a municipal solid waste decision making tool which enabled different cities across the US in identifying what is the best method in managing their waste streams. And it could take care of varying level of mixing of waste at the household. It could look at various degrees of infrastructure present, compare larger cities vis-a-vis a smaller city where infrastructure is not so well developed. And that is where waste management innovation we brought up. And we took that on to industrial waste management, and we saw that when we're talking of innovation, it doesn't only mean that it has to be technologically feasible, it has to be financially feasible. Waste management technologies, before they are applied, before we are even innovating new technologies, we have to look at other factors as well, which are the pollutants that you're releasing to the atmosphere, okay? The ecological effects that your technology has on the atmosphere, on your environment, on the common citizens who are living across. I mean, there are perhaps countless stories here in India that where ordinary citizens are protesting the setting up of a landfill facility beside their home, the NIMBY syndrome, so famously coined over here. And that probably brings us that innovation in waste is just not about having a great IRR or a payback period, but it's also all of these 5 factors which we have tried and understood through our work back with the US EPA. And in the same piece of work, what we also did is, again from the American concept, but we can always see and replicate it in the Indian context, is which of the various well-established industrial waste recycling technologies kind of fulfill beneficially on all of these factors. And something like use of fly ash for cement manufacturing, bottom ash for structural concrete, steel slag in asphalt pavement. So all of these forms of reuse, did a green check on the checklist that it was beyond technical and commercial feasibility. It enabled a conducive environment for recycling, which not only involved the waste generator, but also the waste management entity, the waste regulator, and more importantly, the stakeholders, the ordinary citizens around which all these initiatives are taking place. And that, I think, is the essential difference between bringing out a new product and innovating a new product. And that is what I thought probably is of interest and the third takeaway of my discussion. Few other technologies which have come out on a very low cost basis. In Uganda, Nigeria, we have looked at molding technologies for plastic, which is not incineration, so it doesn't lead to a lot of fumes, but it just melts plastic into sheets, which can be used for other purposes. There's something also known as a plastic bank, which is probably a good nomenclature for the hitherto unorganized plastic recycling system that we have here in India, where the rag pickers from our homes, they take the plastic and sell it to these authorized recyclers or aggregators. So they have a formalized system over there called the plastic bank. Other innovations could be lightweighting the materials. So having a lower thickness of PET bottles probably reduces the amount of plastics we consume. Bioplastics, biodegradable plastics, a new initiative in material science that's probably catching up across the world. So you still have all the features of plastic, all its essentialities. However, it doesn't have the environmental issues or impacts that a regular plastic would have. And again, you always have the pyrolysis and the waste to energy technologies if everything else fails and there's no scope of product or material innovation available for the product in concern or in consideration. So that is where we come from the technology, and maybe on my final slide, obviously, would like to always emphasize that it's just not about the technology, just not about the innovation within it, but also a lot of ecosystem support that probably every technology deserves. It's heartwarming to know that India is looking in waste management in a big way. Last year we had separate regulations coming under various waste streams with extended producer responsibilities attached, and so I think it's a mix of efforts coming from the federal government, coming from the waste generators, their initiative into seeing how best they can meet the regulations but in a beneficial way which makes sense to the bottom line. The local authorities who are the handholders in the final implementation, and the waste producers. So this is the essential ecosystem that we also have to take in mind while we are looking at innovation in the waste management space. Thank you everybody, and I can take your questions now or later as the chair presides.